Maurice Scott just took a massive L in court, and it wasn't pretty. When you go up against a social media powerhouse like Black Titanic, you better come prepared with facts, receipts, and a solid case. Unfortunately for Maurice and the OWN network, they found themselves in a legal mess that left them looking downright embarrassed. So, what exactly happened? What did Maurice expect to gain from this lawsuit, and how did Black Titanic manage to flip the script on them? Buckle up, because this case took a turn that no one saw coming. When reality TV stars take their battles from the small screen to the courtroom, things can get messy, and that's exactly what's happening with Maurice Scott. Alongside the OWN network, Maurice took legal action against Black Titanic, a social media commentator known for exposing behind-the-scenes drama from Love and Marriage, Huntsville. But here's the twist. Instead of walking away victorious, Maurice found himself unprepared, confused, and downright embarrassed in court. From weak arguments to a judge who wasn't having it, this case is turning out to be one of the most talked about legal battles in reality TV history. Today, we're diving deep into why Maurice Scott and the OWN network decided to sue Black Titanic and the major courtroom blunders that made Maurice look foolish. What does this mean for Love and Marriage, Huntsville, and the OWN network moving forward? By the end of this video, you'll understand why this case might be one of Maurice Scott's biggest mistakes yet. So grab your popcorn, because this tea is about to get piping hot. Let's dive in. Let's start at the beginning. What exactly led Maurice Scott and the OWN network to take legal action against Black Titanic? For those who don't know, Black Titanic is a social media commentator and blogger who has been outspoken about the behind-the-scenes drama of Love and Marriage, Huntsville, LAMH. She's built a strong following by dissecting the show's cast, calling out inconsistencies, and, most importantly, exposing things that many believe the OWN network and the LAMH stars don't want the public to know. But here's the kicker. Maurice Scott wasn't just mad about online gossip. According to sources, he and the OWN network allegedly felt that Black Titanic was spreading misinformation, damaging reputations, and even crossing legal lines by using copyrighted material from the show. If you've been following Love and Marriage, Huntsville, you already know Maurice has had his share of scandals, from shady business dealings to questionable loyalty in his marriage with Kimmy. So, naturally, when a blogger like Black Titanic started digging up old receipts and piecing things together, it didn't sit well with Maurice. Maurice and the network weren't happy about it, and it didn't stop there. Reports claimed that Black Titanic's content had started gaining serious traction, even influencing public perception of the show's stars. People began questioning the authenticity of Maurice's business ventures, his credibility, and even his true role on the show. OWN, as the platform airing the show, likely saw this as a threat to their brand, especially if Black Titanic's claims were leading to negative PR. So, what did they do? They took the legal route, filing a lawsuit to either silence Black Titanic, force her to stop using their content, or even get her social media platforms shut down. But what they didn't realize was that they were walking into a legal battle they were not prepared for, and that's when things started to go completely downhill for Maurice Scott. When Maurice and the OWN network decided to take Black Titanic to court, they probably thought they had a strong case. Maybe they assumed their power, influence, and legal team would be enough to intimidate a social media commentator into silence. But what they didn't count on was how unprepared, weak, and downright embarrassing their legal arguments would turn out to be. Let's break it down step by step, because this courtroom drama was even juicier than an episode of Love and Marriage, Huntsville. First and foremost, one of the biggest mistakes Maurice and OWN made was walking into court without enough concrete evidence to support their claims. According to sources, Maurice and his legal team tried to argue that Black Titanic was spreading misinformation, but their lack of solid proof quickly became evident. Maurice and OWN argued that Black Titanic was spreading false information and defaming his character. However, the judge quickly challenged them by asking for specific examples, statements made by Black Titanic that were factually untrue and could be proven defamatory. And guess what? They didn't have much to show for it. In defamation cases, it's not enough to simply say, "She's talking about me and making me look bad." You have to prove that what's being said is false. In Black Titanic's case, much of what she was discussing was based on actual events, receipts, and things Maurice himself had said on television. If Black Titanic mentioned Maurice's questionable business dealings, was she lying or just repeating information that was already available? If she brought up his past statements about his marriage, was she making things up or simply analyzing what he had already said? The lack of solid evidence was the first sign that this lawsuit was built on shaky ground. Another huge mistake Maurice and Owen made was underestimating the power of free speech and fair use laws in today's digital age. Social media commentators and bloggers have the right to discuss, critique, and analyze public figures and reality TV stars, especially when they're using publicly available information. Owen may have assumed they could shut Black Titanic down by claiming she was using copyrighted content from the show. But the problem was, fair use laws protect commentary, criticism, and news reporting. If Black Titanic was only using short clips or discussing events from the show, she had every right to do so under fair use. When the legal team tried to push this argument, they were quickly met with resistance from the judge, who reminded them that criticism and opinion aren't illegal. Instead of silencing Black Titanic, the lawsuit only brought her more attention, more followers, and more engagement. It was a complete backfire, exactly the opposite of what Maurice and Owen wanted. Now, here's where things get really embarrassing. Multiple sources claim that during the courtroom proceedings, Maurice struggled to clearly explain what he was even suing for. There were moments when his arguments contradicted themselves, leading to confusion and frustration from the judge. At one point, the judge reportedly even challenged Maurice directly, calling into question the logic of his case. Maurice and his lawyers struggled to explain why they believed Black Titanic's content was causing actual harm, and the silence in that courtroom was deafening. Without a clear, legally sound argument, Maurice and the OWN network started fumbling their case in real time, and it only got worse from there. Meanwhile, Black Titanic came prepared and fought back hard. While Maurice Scott and Owen were struggling to make their case, Black Titanic wasn't backing down. In fact, she came to court with receipts, confidence, and a strong defense. Instead of simply defending herself, Black Titanic's legal team flipped the script and exposed major flaws in Maurice's arguments. She proved that much of what she was discussing was already public information. She also highlighted past instances where the OWN network had benefited from public commentary. So, why was she being targeted now? Black Titanic showed that Maurice Scott and other reality TV stars willingly put their personal lives on display, so why was it suddenly an issue when someone analyzed it? At one point, reports claimed Maurice looked visibly uncomfortable as Black Titanic's lawyers picked apart the weaknesses in his case. The judge was not impressed, and with each week argument shut down, it became more and more obvious that this case was not going the way Maurice had hoped. And just when you thought things couldn't get worse for him, they did. If Maurice Scott thought this lawsuit would be a quick victory, he was in for a rude awakening. Instead of walking out of court with a win, he ended up embarrassing himself in front of everyone: the judge, the legal teams, the media, and most importantly, the very audience he was trying to silence. At the start of the proceedings, Maurice and his team still had some level of confidence. Maybe they thought they could overwhelm Black Titanic with legal jargon, intimidate her into backing down, or use their network's influence to control the situation. But as the hearing went on, the judge's patience started to wear thin. Multiple reports claim that the judge grew visibly frustrated as Maurice's lawyers struggled to present a coherent case. One of the most embarrassing moments came when the judge directly questioned Maurice on why he believed Black Titanic's content was legally problematic. Was it false information? Personal harassment? Financially damaging to him or the network? Maurice fumbled over his words, unable to give a straight answer. That's when the judge reportedly leaned in, took a deep breath, and called out the weak foundation of the case. Eyewitnesses claim that the judge flat out told Maurice's legal team they were wasting the court's time by presenting arguments that didn't hold up under legal scrutiny. Now, let's pause for a second. Do you know how bad your case has to be for a judge to essentially call you out in court? But wait, it gets even worse for Maurice. While Maurice was struggling to explain himself, Black Titanic's team hit back hard. They presented a powerful counterargument that completely exposed the hypocrisy of Maurice and the OWN network. First, They pointed out that OWN has long benefited from online discussions, social media buzz, and bloggers talking about the show. Bloggers, YouTubers, and social media commentators have helped keep love and marriage, Huntsville relevant, and OWN has never had an issue with free promotion from influencers and bloggers until now. So, why were they suddenly trying to silence Black Titanic? The defense argued that Maurice and OWN weren't truly concerned about defamation. They were trying to control the narrative. In other words, they didn't like being criticized and were using a lawsuit to shut down a voice they couldn't control. This argument struck a nerve, not only with the judge but with the public as well. At this point, the courtroom was already tilting against Maurice Scott, but what happened next completely destroyed his credibility. Black Titanic's team pulled out direct statements and past interviews from Maurice himself, where he had made public comments that contradicted his claims in court. For example, Maurice had previously spoken openly about his personal life on Love and Marriage, Huntsville. He had made controversial business claims on television and addressed relationship rumors and drama on public platforms. So, how could he now argue that a blogger analyzing that same information was damaging his reputation? At one point, Maurice reportedly looked visibly uncomfortable as the court was reminded of some of his own words and actions. Even the judge seemed unimpressed, with sources claiming that there was a moment of complete silence as Maurice's contradictions were laid out in front of everyone. In that moment, it became painfully obvious that Maurice Scott had walked into court with a weak case, a bad strategy, and a complete misunderstanding of how media commentary works. Here's the thing. When a lawsuit starts falling apart, you have two choices: accept defeat gracefully and move on, or try to save face by scrambling for a last-minute argument. Maurice and his team chose option 2, and it did not go well. Desperate to regain control, they tried shifting their argument in the middle of the hearing. Instead of just focusing on defamation, they began arguing that Black Titanic was unfairly targeting Maurice. They claimed that her content was harassment and that she was going too far with her critiques. They even suggested that OWN Network was suffering financial losses because of her content. But there was a problem. None of these claims were backed up with actual evidence. If it was harassment, why weren't they pursuing criminal charges? If it was a financial loss, where was the proof that OWN Network was losing money? If Black Titanic was making false claims, why couldn't they show concrete examples? The courtroom saw right through this last-minute attempt to switch arguments, and by that point, it was clear Maurice and OWN had lost. The lawsuit was crumbling before their eyes, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. When the judge finally delivered the verdict, it was a complete disaster for Maurice Scott and the OWN Network. Key takeaways from the ruling. The lawsuit was dismissed due to lack of evidence. Black Titanic was cleared of any wrongdoing, and Maurice and OWN were criticized for bringing a weak, baseless case. In short, it was a humiliating loss for Maurice Scott. But that wasn't even the worst part, because instead of silencing Black Titanic, this lawsuit only made her bigger, stronger, and more influential than ever. After the court ruling, Black Titanic's name was trending. She gained thousands of new followers, and her credibility as a blogger skyrocketed. More people than ever started tuning in to hear what she had to say. As for Maurice, well, let's just say his reputation took a major hit. Fans of Love and Marriage, Huntsville, began questioning his motives. He was widely mocked on social media for how badly he handled the case, and even some of his own supporters admitted that the lawsuit was a bad look for him. In the end, this entire ordeal backfired in the worst way possible. Instead of proving he was a victim, Maurice Scott ended up exposing himself. Now, with his credibility shaken and the internet roasting him left and right, the big question is, can Maurice Scott ever recover from this embarrassing legal defeat? What happens next? Will Maurice Scott address this loss publicly, or will he try to pretend it never happened? If you liked our video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.